I've now stained all the ties in the same fashion and method that I explained in earlier videos. You can refer to those videos for an explanation. And I've also cut these guard timbers that go on the outside of the ties near the ends, about roughly 18-24 inches from the ends. And typically what happens is the ties fit in these notches in here, and that is what secures them all. And I have enough here to do the whole length with some adjustments, which I'll have to do. I'll be cutting the ends so that the ends will actually have an overlap, a half lap on the joint between each timber. Also now what I've done is I've installed a new jig, and this jig is to hold these outer timbers in the appropriate position. They're sitting inside two pieces of scrap wood here on each side, and I've measured those and located them accordingly to the to what I believe is the correct dimensions, and they will carry these guard timbers, and then the ties will go in each slot, and they'll be pressed in and glued in place as they go along. And then once that's all they're done in the entire length, I'll take that out, and of course I think you can sort of see what would happen. You'd have all the ties on the underside, you got the guard timbers across the top, and that is going to end up being about 30 inches long. This gives you an idea what the intent is, and you can see here that's the guard timber there, and you can just see how each notch is cut out with probably with an adze or an axe on the underside, so that each tie fits into each of those slots, and that's what helps to secure it. And then there are bolts that are every fourth or fifth tie all the way down. What I've done on all these guard beams is I've cut out the top half of one end and the bottom half of the other end in order to create a half lap joint, and then there'll be a bolt go through that joint that'll pin these two pieces together. And once that's done, I lay those into the jig that we made and glued them in place, and then I put a tie on that joint just to help secure it with some glue. Now what I'm doing now is the rest of the ties, and as I said before, I like to use a little bit of white glue, and I put it on a Post-it page. I'm going to take a toothpick, and I'm just randomly filling in just a tiny dab of glue there, and I'm randomly putting these in and then into filling them, and then I just take one of these joists here, and some of them I've stained with some gray on the face just to give some texture variety. I push it up against this stop here and gently press it in place. It's very tight, and it will be erased, but then what I'll do is I'll take a weight and I'll press it down into the joint, and of course this block of iron here bridging from there to there will keep all these level, so when I flip it over all the ties will be flush regardless of whether these notches were a little too deep or otherwise. So I'm just pressing those in like so, and again we just take some more, slightest dab. It doesn't take a lot because you don't want the glue to ooze out on the back side, and then take a tie, and again I look at the side that I'd like to have face up and I turn it face down and butt it up against the jig stop, press it in, bridge the tie I just put in, press it down, and you can feel and see it snap into place, and just continue all the way down, filling in the spaces that were left as we sort of randomly install them. And when that's dry, I can lift this whole thing out and turn it over, and then I'll put in all the bolts that go into the tie and the guard beam. The deck is almost complete now. As you can see, all the ties are now in place in the notches of the side guard beams. The next step will be to flip it over, install the NBWs, install the rail, spike it in place. If the spikes come through the bottom, then we'll just grind the tips off of those spikes that protrude. Once that's all done and the bridge is painted, then we'll bond the deck on top of the I-beams. I've completed the installation of the ties with the outer guard timber, and this is just a test fit on the bridge. The ends have been beveled, and I'm ready to put in all the NBWs across the top, so you can see the finished effect. It's going to look pretty sharp. I'll be putting in the rails next. I'll spike them down, and they'll be roughly in line on top of those beams that are underneath here. Next I cut 2 lengths of rail, and I'm using code 83. It's weathered rail, and I cut it approximately 2 to 3, a couple of inches longer than the trestle. The reason I do that is when I put the trestle in place, and I'm going to have the bents and the wood trestle coming up to it, this will sit on the bent, and it'll be supported, and I can make this flush through here by making some adjustments instead of trying to butt 2 ends here. And then the next thing I've done is I've marked 2 small dots on a tie at both ends that are approximately 3 feet apart, so that they're in the center of the deck. I'll spike those 2 rails in place, and once I get the 2 of them engaged, I use a long scale, and I've marked another pair down here, another pair of dots, and then what I'll do is I'll put this straight edge against the rail, and I'll spike into the side of this straight edge, and that'll ensure that the rail is absolutely straight and spike from the other side, and I'll go down the whole length. And then I'll use since I have that one rail perfectly straight and in the right position, I'll then use my rail gauge and spike the other one along the side of it. The rail is now installed, and I've received the castings for the stone abutments from C.C. Crow, and they'll be stained shortly, and then they'll be installed in the scenery. These footings sit on this end. There'll be a steel plate go on the back side that the wood bent will sit on and connect to the end of the pin connected bridge.